Welcome to the Island Treasures mini podcast for caregivers. I'm your host and certified caregiving consultant, Allison Van Schie of Alongside Caregiver Consulting. This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Cabin Teely Contractors in the Comox Valley on beautiful Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, where we care too. In the full episode entitled A Flood Amidst Caregiving, not only did Roxane share her caregiving story, but she shared how her experiences as a caregiver now help her better relate to other caregivers she may encounter through her work as a social worker, and how she recognizes now that expressions of anger may be expressions of sadness. She also learned a valuable lesson of heeding the advice of her doctor. You need to take a break. And that self-care is really important, especially for caregivers. Roxane suggests that it may be helpful for caregivers to consider themselves as first responders. As you make that call to 911, first of all, you make sure that you're safe, and then you can receive the guidance that the operator gives you. Sort of like how a caregiving consultant can help when you ask for assistance from one of them. Take a listen to this excerpt.
I also believe what's really good for caregivers is to think of yourself as a first responder. I remember one of my first aid classes, we were told, okay, when you see the vehicle that's burning, what do you do first? Well, you call 911. You make sure that you are safe before you pull the person out from the wreckage. If you even should be pulling the person out of the wreckage, you're talking to 911, you are getting guidance from others. Can I do this? So why would it be any different for caregivers? Caregivers need to receive and accept that guidance from others and to be assured that they, as a first responder, are in good physical, mental, emotional well-being before they reach out to help.
Roxane shared about her grief process. Encountering a flood amidst caregiving was definitely catastrophic and caused her grief, and yet she saw it also provided John with a purpose. And together, she and John were advocates, researching how to address the flooding situation in their area. And their work together provided much of the content for Roxane's memoir, Moving the Flood. But nothing compares with the grief she continues to process with the loss of her husband. And one more takeaway that Roxane offered was, we don't think to hold back on our laughter, so why do we hold back on tears? Working through her grief, Roxane is now able to dance again in the shop where she and John restored classic cars together. If you'd like to hear more about any of these highlights, I invite you to listen to the full episode. But I do recognize how precious your time is, especially as caregivers, so this mini podcast is designed just for you. And if you find yourself in the midst of your own caregiving journey and do need some supports, I invite you to tap into alongsidecaregiverconsulting.ca. Thanks for listening to this mini podcast or watching the video version of the podcast. And thank you to Roxane Anderson for sharing your caregiving story, your wisdom, and your insights. Take care.